Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys. And as you can see, I have moved off the railroad tracks up to Alaska.
Let me remind folks that you can get one of these scrolling banners online, and with the election season heating up, this isn't a bad thing to have to create impressions. Of course, if you can stand in the line of sight of a TV camera, it's all the better. But go to the fairtaxstore.com or org.
It's an org, and I don't think there's a "the" on it. I think it's just fairtaxstore.org. And you can get those things. Those things for a couple of dollars, free shipping. I mean, and while you're there, you might as well pick up some of the Palm cards and the prebate cards. Those are entirely free cards and free shipping that you can hand out to people. So going to fairtaxstore.org, we would certainly encourage people to do that. Now, if you were watching last week, as we were signing off, you said you were going to save your jokes for the next week because I was trying to wrap up the program. I will give you a few minutes here to get your jokes out before we get started.
I only had one, and it had to do with the fact that the IRS is planning on using artificial intelligence, in helping develop a more fair tax collection system. I didn't want to say fair tax too close together there, because the Internal Revenue Service was using the word fair in manner of speaking to restore fairness to the tax system. Using artificial intelligence. And of course, my joke was, well, in radio, we invented artificial intelligence. That's a priority for getting a job in radio, is to have artificial intelligence. So there you go. I'm here all week, by the way, and next week too. We'll be here through the holidays.
Okay. Well, yeah, you can make jokes about your own industry, no problem. But this, unfortunately, is not a joke. This is what the Congress critters are actually trying to do to the tax code. Our weekly look at congress.gov. And for those that are new to this, we go to congress.gov. In the search bar, you put the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes, so you're searching on that string and not the individual words. And hit the go up there. And as of the date we're recording this, 1,112 hits on the return there when you're looking for what Congress is doing to the Internal Revenue Code. And we'll start off today with one from the Senate side, S3172, a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to include certain over-the-counter dietary supplement products and foods for special dietary uses as qualified medical expenses. I see you have no reaction to that.
Well, I mean, the complexities of the tax code, and when you get to be over 65, the complexities of another government provided benefit, Medicare, you think about how all that jives together. And I'm sitting here trying to figure out, my wife just started on Medicare, and I know we're not necessarily talking specifically about Medicare, but I mean, it is downright, you have to go back to school to learn. There ought to be a class at Tech that you could go take to help you become proficient in understanding even what your agent friend has told you about complexities.
Well, I think what they're getting at here, you do not deduct medical expenses dollar for dollar. Not every dollar you spend on medical expenses can be deducted from your income. You have to go above a certain threshold, and it's actually pretty high. So folks that just get routine medical care throughout the year don't qualify to have all that deductible. So it sounds like somebody's just trying to add to what you can count as a medical expense in an effort to get folks to. But then 88% of the people don't itemize deductions at all, and that won't make any difference to them whatsoever.
Right. That's exactly right. And again, you go back to the tax code should be tossed out anyway, because it becomes a lot more of what's in there is for a single business industry category, or for one company in some cases.
Okay, well let's go on here. The next one on the list is HR 6109, 6109, the Pills Act, Pills, the Pills Act, and this one actually has some text in it. It says to amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish the generic drugs and biosimilars production credit, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. A generic drugs and biosimilars production credit. So apparently, if you're going to produce this stuff, that the author of this bill, Claudia Tenney from New York, wants to give you a tax credit for that.
Fantastic. I'm all for, I'm all for tax credits, but there's so many layers inside of the tax code. I guess you have a specialist, a tax specialist, if you're a large corporation, to make sure that you don't miss the little nuggets of opportunity within the code itself.
I guess. Let's move on. This one caught my eye. The Mechanical Insulation Installation Incentive Act of 2013. HR 6104, the Mechanical Insulation Installation Incentive Act of 2023. And that is a bill to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide a credit for the labor costs of installing mechanical insulation property. Got that?
Yeah. I don't get it. I mean, I got it, but I don't get it. I just, again, it's for one. It provides a benefit to one specific category, as opposed to all the people who would pay tax. And the fair tax, of course, wipes out all of the. I don't know what. Well, I guess if we ever get the fair tax passed in the next year or two, we won't have to worry about Congress.gov on this show anymore, because the show will be following the income tax and closing down.
Yes, when we get the fair tax passed, we will have accomplished our purpose. And as much as I enjoy our weekly conversations here, we won't have to have them anymore. All right, let's move on. The next one is the HR 6072. This is something that's kind of related to the industry you're in. This is the Independent Programmers Tax Incentive Act to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide tax credits for carriage of independent programmers by certain multi-channel video programming distributors. I guess that means they want to get the cable companies and DirecTV and folks like that to start carrying these little independent channels, and not the ones that are owned by mega corporations like ESPN and Fox and stuff like that. You get a tax credit for carrying the little guys.
Well, a long time ago, the cable companies had to supply a channel based on their subscriber base for the community. That if you lived if you were in a residence and you had XYZ cable company as your supplier of programming, they had to, as part of their franchise agreement with the community that they served, they had to supply a channel for the purpose of myself or you walking in, and we could do a show like this. And they had to supply the studio, they had to supply cameras and recording equipment, and they had to supply a time where they could teach you how to run all that equipment and produce a show that would show up on, channel 185 at 3:00 in the morning.
Oh, mercy.
That was it. So now we have a whole different way of getting our video, considerably more ways of doing that, like where people are watching our program or any other show that they would have out there.
Yeah, so how many people have cut the cord and they're now streaming what they want to watch? But whatever.
And when they want to watch it too, it's changed completely. And so we see those challenges. But yes, I agree with having a way for independent productions to make it so people can find it And that's what I think is going on here.
But do you need a tax code change to make that happen is the $64,000 question. One more before we leave, and this one is actually somewhat similar to the one we put in the Hall of Shame last week. This is S3155, Stop Subsidizing Multi-Million-Dollar Corporate Bonuses Act, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to expand the denial of deduction for certain excessive employee remunerations and for other purposes. Again, the government wants to set itself up as the judge of when you're making too much money and take what they think that they are entitled to that you've earned.
Yeah. No.
So that's Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island is proposing that one, the Stop Subsidizing Multi-Million-Dollar Corporate Bonuses Act. So he's definitely got to have the tax code involved in that. How crazy is that? Okay. Let's move on here. You found us another article, which I thought was pretty interesting, and it comes from North Carolina State University. Now, I will have to say though, as a dyed-in-the-wool Tar Heel, I have a certain disdain for North Carolina State, almost equal to the disdain I have for Duke. But North Carolina State, if I remember correctly, this is where Professor David Kendall, the gentleman we've talked to on the program a couple of times before that teaches up at the University of Virginia now, that he went to school at NC State. And he ought to come back and set these folks straight on what this guy, apparently Nathan Goldman, wrote this article back in February. Says he answers the burning questions on the proposed Fair Tax Act of 2023. He does a pretty decent job of describing some of the things it will do, but then it not only goes off the rails, it gets way out into the middle of the lake on here. So this article is written in kind of a question and answer format. So let me ask you the question and you can give the answer. Can you explain what this proposed bill is?
And according to Nathan Goldman, the Fair Tax Act is a bill introduced by House Republicans that would do many things. Of note, it would remove federal taxation as we know it, income taxation individual, income taxation corporate, capital gains taxation, payroll, and estate taxation, and replace it with higher sales taxes. Higher sales taxes. In particular, the bill proposes that a federal sales tax would be around 23 to 30%.
Okay, that's accurate. Next, what would happen to the IRS?
Well, it's not actually accurate because there's only $1 amount that comes out, and it's based on, how much you decide you're going to spend. So yes, the 23 is the exclusive, the 30% is the inclusive. Okay, so what would happen?
That's backwards. 23% is inclusive, 30 is exclusive.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry about that.
Okay, but what would happen to the IRS according to Mr. Nathan Goldman here?
Well, the Associate Professor Goldman says the Internal Revenue Service would no longer be necessary under this bill. Instead, the process of collecting taxes would fall on the states, which the bill would allow the states to keep 0.25% of their collections. The bill would also remove the $80 billion given to the IRS under the Inflation Reduction Act of 2022.
Okay, that's accurate. We'll give him kudos for getting that answer right. How might this impact sales taxes and the income tax?
Well, the sales tax would be around 23 to 30% under the bill. Meanwhile, income taxes, both individual and corporate, as well as capital gains, payroll, and estate taxes would no longer be implemented.
Correct. Here's where it starts to go off the rails. Are there any pros and cons of this proposed bill?
The positive of this bill is the simplicity. By imposing a single sales tax rate on purchases, not unlike what we currently pay at the state level, there would be no need to file complicated federal income tax returns. If this bill is successful in being able to disband the IRS, then it could mean net savings to the American people.
Okay, that so far as what he wrote is accurate. But I say he starts to go off the rails here by what he omits. The positive of this bill is its simplicity. The positive of this bill also is the fact that you get to bring home your entire paycheck without any withholding, without any payroll taxes taken out of it. Another positive is that you never have to file a tax return again. Another positive is you don't pay taxes until your spending rises above your poverty level. So there's a lot more positive in this bill that he just kind of doesn't mention.
And I don't know, I can never figure out why people do that. Now, this fellow, Nathan Goldman, is in the Poole College of Management over at North Carolina State University. He's associate professor of accounting in the Department of Accounting. And his areas of expertise are taxation, accounting, and capital markets. So he teaches from a viewpoint of corporate taxation, as opposed to just like an individual and that kind of thing. Not a bad guy. I mean, he seems like a pretty nice fellow, but he's leaving out a lot of positives, and he focuses on where everybody goes when it's time to really get people confused about what the fair tax does. And his first con.
Here's where he starts substituting his opinion for fact. He says the cons are far more compelling. Now, that's an opinion that he's entitled to if he wants to hold it, but he cannot say that that is a fact, because the cons and these cons that he describes aren't really all that accurate about this, saying it would be a large detriment to equality by overwhelmingly benefiting wealthy individuals and corporations at a cost to lower and middle class taxpayers. Tell that to Donald Trump, who only paid $750 worth of income tax one year, and I guarantee you he cannot hold his spending down to the point where he'll only pay $750 worth of fair tax.
Right, because he's got to go to the fast food restaurant and get a cheeseburger and fries every now and then. And he'll pay if he gets a big yacht to go down to Mar-a-Lago, then he'll when they back that boat into his garage, he'll be paying a tax on that too, the fair tax. Well, now here's me on that piece. I'll just to interject for just a minute about this article. Okay, large detriment to equality among the American people by imposing a flat rate on purchases. Lower and middle income class individuals will bear a far greater burden of taxation than under the current system. Now, okay, so you've got somebody that's online and they're typing in fair tax, pros and cons. Which articles do you think are going to come up? Articles like the one that we're reading, that we're reviewing today. And the challenge is people look at this and they take it as the gospel. And this may be as far as they go. They may eventually get to the fair tax website, but as they start looking, they hear fair tax. They go, oh, that sounds pretty good. And then they go in and they get in an article like this, and it puts a brake on their further research. And it goes on, the article continues, the answer continues, while the bill has, in quotes, rebates for lower income taxpayers, it's for everybody, it is unlikely to make up the difference in tax burdens, especially for those who are just outside the range of the rebates.
Now his locomotive is in the lake.
Yeah.
Again, he has done the same thing that millions, probably not millions, but hundreds of other authors on the fair tax have written. They just kind of acknowledge the existence of the prebate, but they just completely blow it off without examining how it actually will affect people. And we've done this time and time again, how the rebate means you get back a family spending right at the poverty level, gets back in their prebate 100% of the tax they pay at the cash register. Their out-of-pocket tax rate is 0. Now, how can you say that if you're giving someone at the very low end of the scale a tax rate of 0, how can you possibly say that you're shifting the tax burden onto that group? That makes no sense.
Well, the two pieces, if people want to go look this article up, it's you'll have to look for, there's a couple of links on X on the Fair Tax Official page. You can dig through and find what because this was actually generated, using this article was actually generated from a conversation that I had with somebody back and forth on X not too long ago. And this is, I'll stay on this and we'll get to the others in a minute, but this is important for folks to know. The bill has rebates. This is what's written in the article as a con, as something against the fair tax for lower income taxpayers. The prebate is for everybody. Yep. One individual, family of 4, 6, whatever it is, based on the poverty level calculated by the federal government on an annual basis, and then you get that money back before you spend it.
That's right.
It's not even in here. It's not even in this.
It is for everybody. The single mother on a minimum wage job and Elon Musk are both entitled to buy their basic necessities tax-free. You treat everyone the same. So the rebate of the prebate, which is actually your rebate is given before you spend it, it's given to you at the beginning of every month, is for everybody. There is no means testing. The fair tax doesn't care how much money you make. He just treats everybody the same. So it's for lower income taxpayers is not really true. And the fact that it is unlikely to make up the difference in tax burden, when you lift someone's tax burden entirely and then turn around and say you're shifting the tax burden onto these folks, you are just not playing with a full deck here.
And then the other thing is an out and out lie. And I'm sorry, I'm going to call the guy on it, especially for those who are just outside the range of the rebates.
Yeah, there is no range. It's based on your household size, whether it's a household of 1 or a household of 15. You can calculate what your prebate is going to be based on your household size. So there's nobody just outside the range. Now, if you choose not to file for it and not to apply for it, you don't get it. You have to, supply your family's members and Social Security numbers to Social Security Administration. But getting the prebate is voluntary. But if you want it, anybody and everybody can get it.
Okay, so now we've sort of beat that one down to and Goldman, Professor Goldman, is just out and out telling a total falsehood on that. And if somebody's just scratching the surface on this and they see that and they think, well, I don't want this. No, can't do that. So the second downside, according to Professor Goldman, is the argument that the new system will lower complexity has its flaws.
Now that's the guy that thinks a clothespin and a Boeing 757 are kind of equal in complexity. I can't resist the opportunity to slide that one in there every time I can.
Have to. Businesses will need to deal, back to the article, Q&A, businesses will need to deal with significant complexity when determining their remittances to the government. And small businesses will especially feel this burden.
Compare that to the complexities and the burden they have to bear under the current system, you fool. Come on.
Okay, so you're a small business. You've got a cash register. You're selling socks. And somebody comes up and buys a box of socks. And all you do is you say, that's $3.99, $3.99, $3.99. $3.99. And these are all left foot socks, by the way. $3.99, $3.99. And so you've got the total, and it's there. It's calculated. The fair tax is calculated into the final price. You look at the receipt, and there it is. How complex is that? And then you reconcile with the state. You reconcile with the state just like you would at a retail, submission to on a monthly basis. And then the state turns around and sends it on up to the U.S. Treasury, and that's the end of it. And the state gets a little bit of cut out of the fair tax for handling it, and the business gets a little bit of a cut for handling it. How complex is that?
It's not. And the buyer pays his tax at the cash register, and he's done. That's it. He's satisfied his obligation right quick. We got just under 4 minutes left. Let's scoot on here. It's third, it's unclear whether a 23% sales tax will be enough to break even on prior tax collections. I will say that when the fair tax was designed in the mid-90s and the extensive research was done to figure out what it would have to be to break even, they came at 23%. That may, over the years now have changed a little bit, but it won't change a great deal. So 23% sales tax will be pretty close to bringing in the same amount as the income tax. But again, the fact that the income tax doesn't bring in enough to cover our spending is an entirely different issue. But
right.
yeah, it'll be close. I mean, this was researched with millions of dollars worth of research, and they could have come up with any number they want to, and 23 was what they came up with and said it would be revenue neutral.
Professor Goldman has taken the two numbers that are used in discussions about the fair tax, 23% and 30. 23% is the number that basically is what it is. However, the 30% number is when it's included in the cost of whatever it is you're buying. Some estimates say that Americans would actually pay closer to 30% more. One analyst predicts it would be closer to 40. So he's just throwing these numbers out there and he doesn't name who these people are. So you can't go and, dispute or debate that particular thought. He's just saying one analyst. Well, who? Is it yourself in the mirror, or is somebody down the hall from you there at the school? So we have to, here he does credit the Tax Policy Center, calculated that the cost of giving the states 0.25% of the sales tax collection actually equates to the Internal Revenue Service budget, which may be correct. I don't give much thought to.
I don't know, but here's where he's in the middle of the lake again, saying a $5 gallon of milk will now cost $7. $100 grocery bill will now cost $140. This is the same debunked thing that we hear from a bunch of folks, that the fair tax is going to add, and they'll say anywhere from 23 to 30% to the cost of everything that you buy. That is not so, because the prices you're paying today include the cost of the income tax system, the tax liability itself, plus all the compliance costs that are being passed on to you. And when those costs disappear from the prices of the things you buy and are replaced with the fair tax, if there's any increase at all, the increase in the fair tax is not going to be anywhere near 23%, because the cost of doing business goes down dramatically under the fair tax. And those savings, the competitive pressures in a free market economy, will see those savings passed on to consumers. So the idea that the 23% fair tax is going to add 23% to the cost of everything you buy is just nuts.
It's just not true. It's not going to happen that way. And the challenge for I got the wrong earplug in my ear. For those of you on TV, think I'm growing a root out of my ear. The challenges that are faced in debating this is that these numbers are out there, and you have to sit down with them for a minute, and you have to really consider and think about how all of it comes together. The bottom line is the individual gets their paycheck. There's no federal tax withheld. They've got a raise. The business owner on the other side doesn't pay that into the coffers of the U.S. Treasury. He gets to keep that money. He doesn't have to pay taxes on the things that he has to have to make whatever it is that he's selling, or to get it, to procure it. So the cost of acquisition for the goods are going to drop. He's going to be able to, because of competition. Sure, he could probably keep it at an inflated level for a little while, but the man across the street that's selling the same thing he is going to say, hey, you know what? I can get a little more competitive here. I can drop $5 out of the price of this product now. So I'm going to end up with, you're going to have that competition is going to drive that cost down to a more realistic level. And it'll probably end up being exactly where, or close to, what the price is today. But now you're going to get a receipt at the end of the transaction, and you're going to be able to look at that and see what the tax is on it.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we have used up our time again for this edition of Fairtax Power Radio. Again, we would direct people to read this article from North Carolina State. It's mac.ncsu.edu. Just go there and then use their search function on Fairtax to find it, and see that this guy is just not being completely honest about it. And we've called him on it. So I'm afraid that's it for this edition of Fairtax Power Radio. Thank you again so much for watching, listening, and sharing the videos. Until we meet again, I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
The FAIRtax Guys providing you the fair tax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? What'd you say, 40,000? Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right. And you?